Welcome to the Poultry Keepers Podcast, where we talk poultry from feathers to function. In this episode, John Gunterman, Mandelyn Royal, and Rip Stalvey are talking about the basics of keeping waterfowl.
Waterfowl, including ducks and geese, are increasingly popular additions to backyard flocks. They provide many benefits, from eggs and meat to pest control and entertainment. For those new to keeping waterfowl, understanding their unique needs and characteristics is essential. This podcast hopes to address some of the common questions about waterfowl breeds, care, nutrition, breeding, practical uses, and basically give you a good guide for getting out of the gate and getting started. Yeah, Rip can fix that in post-production. We call that the pregnant pause. Let's start at the top. When we're talking about waterfowl, I immediately think to the wild native waterfowl that I have in the pond, and the reason that I can't have waterfowl because it's too much of a cross-contamination risk. But what are we talking about domesticated waterfowl in the first place?
I think that somebody just starting out, it's just like starting out with chickens. What's your goals? What do you want to accomplish? And then begin looking at what breed will help you do that the best. Do you want meat? Then I'd look at breeds like Pekin ducks, geese, particularly the Emden geese are good at that. Muscovies are, a lot of folks love to eat muscovies, and really they're much more like a goose than they are a duck.
Yes, they are.
They don't quack, for one thing, but
any of them available for down harvesting? That's my only association with the Canada goose, is the beautiful down that we get from them because it's so warm.
John, I'm not really up to speed on down harvesting, but I would imagine that they are. And some breeds like our Emdens and Toulouse and all that are larger than the Canada goose, so I would think that you would get more down off of that than you would.
Well, I'm always looking for an ethical source for down.
Mm-hmm.
We do use a lot of it up here in Vermont for insulation in our clothing.
I can imagine. If somebody wants duck eggs, and there's getting to be a pretty good business, people selling duck eggs for food consumption.
They're delicious.
I think hands down, the two best breeds would be runner ducks, sometimes called Indian runner ducks. And they're very upright. I always describe them as looking like a folded up umbrella on feet running around, because they're very upright and got that little head that shoots out there at an acute angle. But another one would be khaki Campbells. Those are good egg layers too.
They're probably the best egg layers for the ducks. And I really enjoy duck eggs for baking. There's a slight difference in the texture when you compare it to a chicken egg. So it really helps to hold up your baked goods just a little bit different than a chicken egg would do it.
It's a different type of protein than is in common poultry. If you have albumin allergies, your allergist usually recommends you go to duck eggs. And then if you can't tolerate duck eggs, you come to quail.
I know a lot of folks are getting back to the runner ducks, go with runners because they're a slightly smaller duck, but they still lay a good sized egg, and they don't require as much feed per dozen eggs. They have better food conversion than some of the other breeds most commonly associated with.
Yeah, they're not quite as heavy as the others.
No, they're not. They're also one of those breeds that make really good buggers.
Yeah.
Particularly out over in France, I've seen videos where this big semi, it looks like a cattle truck. It's got those ventilated sides on it, but there's about 4 or 5 layers of floors in that thing. And every one is just crammed full of runner ducks. And they have this little ramp down there, and they just all file out, single file, zoom, go right out into the fields and start eating bugs and snails. Use them a lot in wine grapes, because they eat all the bugs off the wine grapes.
It's a beautiful system. I don't even want to use the analogy, almost never mind, but the beekeeping industry travels around with bees for pollination, which is a horrible practice. But using natural systems to do your pest management the way nature intended.
Absolutely.
The ducks are eating exactly the most beautiful diet they can, fresh every day, and providing an amazing service to the farmers. And it's just a great relationship.
last season when I had my mama duck Muscovies and their ducklings, I was keeping them in tractors initially to keep everybody safe and sectioned off with their own space. And then I would let them out, and right in front of my tractors, we had a very large tomato patch. And the mama duck took all of her babies and they just ran through that patch of tomatoes and they plucked out all the small weeds, all of the bugs, and it was going fantastic. The tomato plants didn't get trampled at all. They didn't uproot any of them. And it didn't become a problem until those tomatoes turned red.
All bets were off at that point.
Yeah. I also found limiting the access, like only letting them into the garden area like twice a day. In the morning,
yeah, not full time.
Get early bugs, and then in late afternoon when the evening bugs start coming out. Otherwise, they get too aggressive and they start eating my plants that I want to eat.
Mandy, you touched on another reason to keep waterfowl, and that's weeding. And there's businesses that rent out flocks of geese to weed fields. There's a breed that was almost extinct at one time here in the South called cotton patch geese.
Well, I've heard good things about them.
They are fantastic. When I was at the museum, we had a small flock of those. And going through some of the historical accounts of cotton patch is that they, let's see, what was it? 4 cotton patch geese could do the work of man, one man weeding the cotton in one day. And they just turned them loose and kept them in there.
Now, I tried geese once because my husband was super sweet, and he gifted me a pair of geese for Valentine's Day about 5 or 6 years ago. And they were perfect to me. And it was a pilgrim hen and a Chinese male. And that Chinese male would come up to me, and he would let me hug him. And he was always trying to hang with me just as much as he hung with his mate. But the very moment my husband came outside, oh, it was war. That gander wanted nothing to do with him. And he told him every time he saw him. And then I let the female hatch out some eggs, and we encountered some very mean offspring.
Canada geese are bad about that.
But that whole experience of having the geese, it makes me appreciate my Muscovy that much better. It's like the perfect combination between duck and goose.
Some breeds of geese have vile tempers, especially during breeding season.
Oh, yeah.
Seropsis geese, you can't go around those things without a seriously heavy-duty garden rake when they're breeding. Egyptian geese, some of those lines are pretty bad. I know Walt Leonard told me he had some that would, when they went after you, they'd fly up and go for your eyes, which is a little bit disconcerting. But yeah,
the Canadian geese dolls up here. No. The running joke, which really isn't a joke, is the Canadians are so nice because they put all their hate in their geese and let their geese fly away. And we have them nesting all the time in the spring out in the fields when they're really wet, and they're vicious. They will go toe to toe with a combine.
I can believe it. Nice attitudes.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's definitely worth noting that if you're the type to keep your different species within the same flock space, when you have a pair of geese, they can potentially be really damaging to your other birds once spring rolls around.
Yep.
And they may not tolerate sharing their space if they're feeling a little bit nesty. And if you're trying to do the guard goose thing, the only way that really works is if you have just females and no male, and potentially just one. As soon as you have a flock of geese, they can not be beneficial anymore in a mixed flock setting. Just something to be aware of if you hear about a guard goose. If you get a pair, they're going to guard each other and not much else. But they will tell you when UPS shows up at your house. They will tell you everything different outside. And guard geese are very mindful of anything different. So when mine, I would let them just free range, and I didn't try to force them onto my other birds. And they were the first to tell us anything different. Any strange vehicle, any strange person, any different dog, hawk flyovers, all of it. They told us all about it.
That's why
they don't miss a thing. And some of our listeners out there, I know, raise waterfowl to show. Can be a big part of the hobby. They have some special requirements that you don't run into with chickens and all that, but there's some beautiful breeds of waterfowl. You see them in shows. Some of the Black East Indies, Cayugas, which are also black, but they're black, but they have that emerald sheen to them when they get out in the sun.
Oh yeah, cayugas are beautiful.
Yes.
The thighs and that green sheen.
The called ducks, and I'm going to go ahead and touch on this here. We have waterfowl are classed by like ducks and geese, but they break the breeds. They don't have classes in the sense that they did or do in chickens. It's not a geographical class type. It's a size class. We have bantam ducks, which is the Black East Indies, and the called ducks, things like that. And then you have lightweight ducks, medium weight ducks, and heavyweight ducks. And that's where your Muscovies and your breeds like Pekins fall into those heavyweights. So that's helpful to know. But called ducks they're really popular at shows. But I had some one time for about 2-3 days. That's an exaggeration, but those things are the noisiest little birds you can ever imagine. But,
oh yeah, they're very vocal, and there's almost 2 different types of call ducks from what I have gathered when I dabbled in them a little bit. Your exhibition type call ducks, the desired look is a very short and very round little beak. And then your more hatchery type of quality has a longer beak, and those tend to hatch easier than the exhibition ones because that short nubby little beak makes it tricky for them to get out of the egg.
That's something we can touch on later on. But waterfowl are like chickens. There's high quality exhibition lines, and there's also that sort of mid quality ho-hum everyday waterfowl. Here's an interesting thing. Some folks may not know how call ducks got their name. Mandelyn, do you have any idea?
I don't.
Ducks were created in England to serve as live decoys, waterfowl hunters, because they would call in the wild ducks, and hence the name call ducks.
I spent many an hour sitting in a flat bottom boat in Brandywine Chute between Memphis and Arkansas waiting for ducks to fly by.
But that's literally why they're so noisy.
Yeah.
And it's more the females that make all the racket than the males. But, oh, man.
Do you know of anybody still training them for that purpose, Rip?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I really don't. I don't even know.
Most of our domestic varieties of ducks, they're mallard derived. And that's why a lot of them sound the same. And any of them that do the quack, that's a mallard derived type. And the range of color that's possible in the domestic breeds from that almost single source, it's really neat. Like one of my favorite duck colors is the Saxony ducks. Those are gorgeous.
It's like a sort of a whitewashed a little bit of a mallard color.
Okay. Hey, Rip, I got a question if we could loop back for a little second.
Sure.
Because you mentioned things like the Pekin duck and the Indian runner and some other ones that had like the very specific geographic representation in their name. Is that because they were bred in that area?
Yes. For example, the Cayuga ducks they originated in Cayuga, New York.
Right. And the Indian runners were somewhere on the Indian continent, maybe?
Yes, from India. But you can learn a little bit about where they came from, but there's no conventional naming system out there that would delineate where they came from or what their purpose was. It's just whatever they decide to call them.
So these were wild waterfowl that somebody domesticated?
Yes. And ducks are classified. You don't run into it at shows, but it's important if you're raising them to know whether you have diving ducks or puddle ducks.
We separate them by divers or dabblers.
Dabblers, same thing as puddle. Yeah.
If you see the tail in the air and just the head under, they're a dabbler. If you're a diver, well, you don't see anything for about 2 or 3 minutes. I remembered from wetland ecology. I remembered that. Thank you, Professor Brodsky. Yes.
That was just some useless trivia. I don't know why I got sidetracked on that. I
think it's important to know because you need to know where their food source is coming from. So I watch the native waterfowl all the time. and I'm out there with my binoculars and my Sibley's birds east. But different times of the year, by watching the pond and seeing what's living and growing, you can tell what they're eating. And our job as keepers is to mimic nature as much as possible. So that could be useful information, or we could just be wasting our time with a pair of binoculars and a book looking at ducks.
Now, there's probably some people out there that have a question in their mind. Are there breeds that are particularly well suited for first-time waterfowl keepers? And to me, there are breeds like cayugas, buff ducks, Peking ducks. They're fairly easy to keep and breed. But when you get into those call ducks, like Mandelyn was alluding to earlier, they have really particular problems when it comes to reproducing. And all waterfowl, you can hatch them in an incubator, but it's a little more complicated process than letting the female hatch them. And especially, it's much different than, totally forgot my hair, sorry.
I was going to mention, though, that my incubators have a waterfowl feature where they do that natural cooling down and extra watering cycles for you, which, from what people have said, have greatly improved their hatchability on their homebred eggs.
It does. And if people are used to hatching chickens, you realize that it takes longer to hatch waterfowl than it does chickens, anywhere from about 26 and a half days to 35 days, depending on the breed.
Mm-hmm. With some very specific cooling cycles built in there, which is weird to me. And
they require,
humidity cycles that are very strange to me as well.
They have a higher humidity requirement. And some breeds of waterfowl, and call ducks are one of them, and geese, seem to hatch better if they are turned by hand and not mechanical turners. So that's something to consider going forward, because you got to turn those things by hand about 4 or 5 times a day to get good hatches. So it's something you have to babysit to raise those.
Yeah, there was a learning curve to it when I was hatching, and I ended up getting a separate incubator, or staggering waterfowl, one batch, chicken, another batch. Mixing them didn't work. So one or the other ended up shorted on something they needed, and then that, of course, reduced the hatch rate. But doing it in their own dedicated incubator so that you can simulate the cooling periods, and I kept a little spray bottle with distilled water in it so I could mist them when I closed the incubator again. It was a lot more involved to get those better hatch rates.
Yes.
What kind of hatch rates did you end up realizing?
Well, the eggs were super fresh, and they didn't get too cold or too hot, and they didn't get too filthy, and I really babysat everything for the entire time, 90, 95, 100%. But if I didn't do those things, I was lucky to get 20%. I brought in shipped eggs for Saxony ducks many years ago, and she sent 20 eggs, and I got 2 chicks, and that was not enough, or 2 ducklings rather. So then I turned around and ordered live babies from Halderod, which was one of the better hatcheries because they still paid attention to breed standard and whatnot. I was very sad to see that they had retired, and a lot of their stock ended up going to Meyer, I think it was.
Another thing they're going to have to be dealing with is waterfowl's need of water.
Yes, because that can have big impacts on your fertility rate too.
Absolutely. Some breeds, absolutely, you can't get any fertility if they don't have water to breed in.
Just daily health. They have to be able to flush their sinuses.
And
yeah, that's
ducks,
the other thing. Their water drinker has to be deep enough that they can get their nostrils into it, because when they go out and they dabble in all that mud, will end up inside, and they have to be able to flush it out.
This concludes part 1 of Introduction to Waterfowl. We hope you'll join us next Tuesday as we finish up an introduction to waterfowl.